To follow up on the more money than followers video, it's a very good idea to have multiple revenue streams. So in this day and age, as we all know, you really can't depend on money from streaming all that much. But as I've also tried to show you, multiple revenue streams of merchandise, teaching, DJing, being hired as a producer, a mix engineer, a mastering engineer, a composer. Perhaps you do have a talent as a logo designer as well. And even multiple revenue streams looking ahead. If you did take my advice in the Money and Wealth course about, how to build on all of that, maybe eventually you will have a piece of property that you can rent. Maybe eventually you can do something like the RV that you had in your grandma's driveway that you paid her $100 a month to let sit there while you lived there, so as not to be an inconvenience inside of her own house, but yet she still wanted to help you, so she let you do that. Maybe you can Airbnb that, turn it into an EDM RV. And I know that might sound far-fetched, but guess what? One time when I was leaving Pittsburgh and heading back to Florida, I wanted to stop in Nashville for the night, for obvious reasons. It's a great musical city. I looked on Airbnb, and oddly enough, there was a very nice RV, tour bus, on Airbnb that you could stay in that was actually a traveling guitarist's RV. And this traveling guitarist has toured on his own music, but he also plays guitar as support for a lot of bigger country artists. So while he's inside of his house, living his life, recording, doing whatever he does in Nashville, his RV sits in the driveway until it's time to tour. Well, being the smart, savvy musician he is, he thought, the darn thing is basically a small mobile home on wheels. Why don't I Airbnb that? And anybody in Nashville probably has some kind of interest in music. So if given the opportunity to spend $80 and stay in a touring rock star's RV, probably is going to take you up on that offer if they can find it. It's a pretty cool idea. And I did. It was cool. It was great. He had a ton of awesome plaques and different things from his tours in the RV. So when I first got in there, before I even unpacked and settled in for the night and got some food and turned on the TV, I spent the first half an hour just walking around the RV and looking at tour posters, autographs, plaques, things of that nature. Now, why can't you do that eventually? Right now that RV looks like a crummy little thing that you're living in until you can get a cheaper living situation organized. But guess what? You're going to look back on that and you're going to have a dinky little DJ controller that you first started out on hanging on the wall, just as you do a guitar. And you look back on that 10 years from now and think that was the first one I used. Or your headphones from 10 years ago, and tour posters, and rave flyers, and candy bracelets, and everything else. That's Airbnb. That's $80 a night. Why wouldn't you do that? Multiple revenue streams. Now, although this isn't necessarily revenue, it's investment. We've already talked about using credit cards that give you a kickback. We've already talked about Roth IRA. We've already talked about high yield savings accounts. All of these things, if taken advantage of, can take an average person and give them wealth. Tax breaks and tax cuts. Thinking about your spending habits. All of this stuff should be thought of because it's all going to enable you, as weird as it sounds, to live your dream as a musician. Odds are we're not going to end up like Taylor Swift. That's unfortunate, but it's true. So why wouldn't you then just understand that and think, well, but that's okay. I can still earn 40, 50, 60, 70K a year as a touring DJ and producer. And by attacking this at other angles, like watching my spending habits, having investments, and maybe renting out that old RV that's in the driveway, doesn't matter if it runs or not, rent it out as the EDM RV in your city and make a couple $100 off it every year. These are the things that can build wealth, and also taking advantage of grants like we talked about. So think about these things, guys, and slowly take advantage of them. This is a lot of info in this course. You don't have to tackle this every single day for the next week. Let this be a year or two long journey as you make music.